welcome to episode 5 of Off the Shelf, your one-stop shop for all of the latest literary news, both here in the library and in the wider literary world. I'm Mr. Humphreys.
And I'm Miss Rio, and we will start with 7 to 9. I'm going to start with a non-fiction book that we've just got in, which really caught my eye. It's this one called The Culture of Clothes. And essentially, this is just a celebration of cultural costume from around the world, all throughout history. And it's so vibrant and colourful, and it has some amazing illustrations. And it takes you through the small details that make up cultural fashion and costumes from all these different places. And some of these I've never even heard of before. I read through it and it was really brilliant. I also picked this because I think fashion can sometimes be seen as something that's quite trivial and not really important to history, but this book proves otherwise. Mm-hmm. It basically shows you that what people wear and the way that they dress themselves in different cultures means a lot more than just fashion and the clothes they're wearing. For example, I'll show you this. So there's this group of women called the Longhorn Mao in China, and they don't have a written language, but the way they tell their history is through their clothes. So they stitch it into the clothes all throughout history.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they wear the same clothes and the same wigs that their ancestors would have worn hundreds of years ago. That's like the way.
That's like wearing your roots almost, like wearing your heart on your sleeve.
It's so cool, and there's so many examples of that in this book. So if you're a history fan and also a fan of clothes,
absolutely,
fashion.
Yeah, and you're right. We do sometimes trivialise fashion, but actually, yes, it's intrinsic to culture.
Exactly, because not every culture has a written language, and that is a lot of the ways that they will tell people who they are and what's happened to them and where they live and things like that. So yeah, definitely recommend that one.
Fantastic.
The next one I want to talk about is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. I thought I'd pick this one up to talk about because I've mentioned a lot of different mythology books.
Yeah, just a few,
in this vlog, because I know it's very popular at the moment. But this one is a Korean folklore tale, and I've not really seen that before. It's often Greek and Roman, as I've said before, but this also just sounds like a really great story. It basically is about a girl called Mina who gets swept away to a magical city in the underwater spirit realm to save her town and her family from all these disasters that is caused by a slumbering sea god. And she basically, I don't want to spoil too much, but she goes to this spirit realm to kind of appease the sea god to save her town and save her family. Okay. So it sounds a bit like a Korean version of Atlantis, that kind of vibe. So it just sounds really interesting. But yeah, it's based on a real Korean folklore tale called The Tale of Shimchong, which I've not heard of before.
I can't say I have either.
But Axio's a great writer. I don't know if you've read anything from her before. And she's basically retold that original folklore tale for a more modern audience.
Yeah, and for our culture too, so it's great. Yeah. It's great that we've got so many of these coming out. And yes, as you say, we haven't had a Korean one yet. I mean, I know nothing about Korean mythology.
No, neither do I.
So yeah, it's be welcomed, and it's great.
Sounds really interesting.
Making it accessible for
another one
for a modern audience.
Yes, I think so. So we'll see if anyone picks that one up, but I think I'm going to read it myself. Next, I've got Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This actually got recommended to me in Waterstones by a bookseller. I was looking at it and she said, "That's great, you have to read that." She said, even though it's, for young readers, I really, really loved it. So I thought, we just got it in after I spoke to that woman, so I thought, I have to I have to mention it. But essentially it's a coming of age story with a bit of a twist. So it follows the main character, Mia, and it's all set in the 90s. And she is a young girl that works with her family at a motel that they are the cleaners at. But what the owners of the motel don't know is that her family sneak in immigrants overnight who have nowhere to go. And she plays a part in that because she wants to help these people who, have nowhere else to go and would otherwise be on the streets. But it's also about her trying to balance that side of her life with also being, a young girl and doing school and trying to keep her friends and make friends and things like that. So
all the things you do in school normally,
all the
right?
things you do in school, but also balanced with this kind of tricky thing that she's trying to help out with.
It sounds like a bit of a thriller aspect to it, perhaps, then?
Perhaps, yeah, I'm not really sure.
It doesn't look like it from the... Don't judge me by its cover, it doesn't look like it. But obviously it's also quite timely.
It might be quite tense.
Moments of tension, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to describe it. It's also very timely, isn't it, because of certain situations going on in the world with refugees and...
exactly.
So...
Yeah. But it's also based on the real experiences of the author, apparently.
Kelly Yang.
Yeah, she worked in a motel with her parents in the 90s at the same time, and someone said, that's such a great story, you need to turn that into a book, and so she did.
Semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, semi-autobiographical, but yeah, the main character sounds really sweet, and just a really nice girl to follow, but then yeah, there's also the added tension of the sort of socio-political stuff that's going on behind the scenes, so definitely one to pick up if you want to know more about the immigrant experience and something that you might not have come across before. This would be a very good way of learning about that in a way that isn't too sort of hard to come by. So yeah, that's my last one.
Okay, good addition to the shelves, I'm sure.
I think so.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Rio. So moving on then, we'll talk about books, some new rows for old students, year 10, 13. So we're going to start with Bitter by, and I'm going to pronounce this all wrong, I know, Awake Emezi. Now, this is not a debut, but she's a fairly new author on the scene. Now, it's been making lots of waves. It's been getting lots of coverage, lots of hype. It's unique, and I think it takes a sort of very brave, bold, no-holds-bar approach to what it means to be a teenage identity, but also finding your place in the world and political activism, and avoiding like sort of being in a bubble. So Bitter is actually the name of the main character, and she attends a prestigious school in, I think it's an unnamed city, a fictional city, that is for talented artists. Okay. And it happens to be located in a city that's got lots of vast disparities of wealth. So whilst it's a very prestigious school, on the streets around there's lots of social unrest, lots of problems, lots of social problems. Now her instinct is just to, I'll ignore all that outside, I'm going to keep my head down, I'm going to study hard, do well, get good grades. Sure. But can she actually do that? That's the central crux of this. So it's a very timely novel again, as we were saying, with Front Desk, on the themes of social responsibility, fundamentally. And, we... as a school, we're part of a wider community too, as we were talking about with our values. Values are certainly a big thing on our agenda here at Stapleton High School. So it's very pertinent for that reason, because, it talks about what does it really mean to be part of a community. And essentially it's like, you can't isolate yourself in a little bubble. There are ties that bind us, that oblige us between us in various different zones. And it does it in a sort of, as I said, in a very unique kind of way. So yeah, definitely one... an author to keep an eye on. Once you read Bitter, Pets, that's her first one. Yes. You might hunt that one down too. So there's that one. Next up, we've got Booth. Booth. Whatever. By Karen Joy Fowler. Now, this could be a future Great American Novel because it's certainly got that sprawling, epic canvas of American history to it. Now, Karen Joy Fowler, she's better known for We Were All Completely Beside Ourselves and the Jane Austen book club. Have you read either of those?
I've read both of those.
You read both of those. Did you like them?
I did.
Yes.
Yeah, both very different.
Yes. Well, she's gone very different again. Those two are very different. This is even more different. Now, those of you who aren't au fait with 19th century American history, John Wilkes Booth was the man who assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Okay. Now, this is not just a straightforward biopic of him. It's also about his family. It's sort of like reclaiming the narrative of his whole family, not just the man himself, but also looking into both his own family, but also the socio-economic circumstances that might have moulded this guy who went on to assassinate Abraham Lincoln. So
interesting.
So yeah, taking the spotlight away from him a bit shows that let's add a human face to his family as well.
A bit like Hamlet.
Yes, just like Hamlet. That's a very good example. And of course, there's 5 siblings that he had. Okay. And so the narrative spotlight moves between those 6 different points of view. And so as well as obviously the big Great American Novel style, looking at the society and all the rest of it, it talks about this sort of the complex. We all have complex families, don't we? The complex exactly. If you remember a family, the complex family dynamics that's sort of eventually led to him making a terrible decision, but also what was the effect on older 5 siblings too, because they,
True.
given them their voice back as well. So now obviously he's one of the most notorious assassins in history. And for that reason, again, it's extremism and how notoriety can grow from seemingly everyday. It comes from a poor family, seemingly everyday. So again, it's sort of like another warning from history for that reason, if you like.
One quick decision can
not just alter yourself, but your family, and it's like a ripple effect, isn't it? Of all of the different things that can go on from just one decision. And last but not least, I'll finish with a non-fiction choice. I have Control by Adam Rutherford. He is the author of How to Argue with a Racist, which made lots of headlines when it was published. Now, the staff of Silverton High School, us and every other member of staff, was very, very lucky when we came back from Easter to be treated to a talk by the great historian, David Olsoga. It was brilliant, wasn't it?
It was very good. It was great.
We were hypnotised, and you could hear a pin drop.
The room was silent. Everyone was just...
It was mesmeric. We could have listened to talk all day.
Yeah.
I think I speak for everyone.
I think we could.
Now, those of you, if you're wondering who I'm talking about, he's the author of Black and British, A Forgotten History. There's an adult version and a version for younger people as well. A House Through Time, the TV series of that.
Yes, which was very good.
Absolutely. So we have those books. But anyway, why am I mentioning him? At the talk, he talked about how 1 in 5 people, which is a minority, but it's an alarmingly high minority, still believe in this belief that people who are not Caucasian have got an inferior IQ, inferior intelligence. Now, this belief, wrong as it is, and it's been widely debunked, this belief stems from a science called eugenics, a very troubling science called eugenics. And this book, Control, is about, as it says here, the dark history and troubling present of eugenics. Because eugenics, the idea that you can manipulate DNA to make superior and inferior people, that hasn't gone away, actually. It's still, there are very many notable examples of history. I think people think of Nazis first and foremost when they think of them. So we sometimes like to comfort ourselves with, it's a thing of the past, but actually, no, it's not. It's still around. There are still people out there who think that we could and indeed should manipulate people's DNA to sort of enhance their abilities and their attributes to make super beings, if you like. So science is progressing all the time. There are new gene editing techniques available all the time. So for that reason, this book is another warning from history, but also from the present, if you like, because science is a wonderful thing, as all your science teachers will tell you, but it can be destructive too, as well as amazing and wonderful. It can be destructive, so it's important to use it responsibly and in a guarded way, as your science teachers will also tell you. So as with How to Argue with a Racist, this is definitely a seminal work. Control by Adam Rutherford. Yes, it does. So there we go. So that concludes the news of our latest arrivals in libraries. So now we're going to talk about some wider literary news. First piece of news is not really actually literary news. It is more school specific, but it's also countrywide specific. It is exam season.
Yes.
Exams are coming up. I don't think none of you need me to remind you of that. Now, if you're wondering why we're talking about exams, you're probably sick of hearing about exams. If you're wondering about why we're bringing it up in Off the Shelf, it's to remind you, good people, that we have got lots of books in here to help you with your studies, to help you with your revision. Round about the 371 Dewey Decimal mark, take note of that. I've just grabbed a few examples off the shelf. So I got here How to Handle Your Exam Nerves. Now, what these books are really good at, they're good at giving you sort of good practical tips for revision, but also really good at sort of making sure, giving you advice to look after your well-being as well. That is equally important. So, just to give you an example. So this one, How to Handle Your Exam Nerves by Catherine Bebo. She's got a good one here, Construct a Memory Palace. So, there are all the usual tips that you will have heard from your teachers, your form tutors, etc. But there's some really good, good practical guides on how you actually follow through with that. A memory palace is a location in your mind where you can store images to recall as and when you need them, like in an exam. And of course, memory palaces, it's not just what Sherlock does to solve crimes, there's that episode where Sherlock did it. You can sort of deal with your more everyday examples, and associate your bedroom, for example, with the different topics you need for your history exam. Sounds crazy, but it works. So, you got that one, and then we've got Exam Attack by Nicola Morgan. Now, as well as great tips like that, this has got really good well-being tips. So here, you probably can't quite see it, but there's a table here. Ideas for foods to eat in exam time. Exam boosts, what to eat before the exam. revision fuel to eat before revising, and meals. Add a yogurt or glass of milk to fuel your brain well, and it gives you all the different ideal foods and drinks for that. And then, there's all sorts of other practical things like, good exercise habits, good things like, make sure that you have regular baths at certain times, all the rest of it too. So there's another good one. And then this is my personal favourite. Yes, You Can Ace Your Exams Without Losing Your Mind by Natasha Devon. And so again, similar thing, but really good practical tips. So here's one. How much time should I spend revising? Your teachers will be able to give you guidance. No teacher I've ever met has recommended going over 2 hours per night. Very true. That's why you have study leave, so you can do some in a day as well. But anyway, it's got okay, so if I'm going to have this much chunk, it's giving you some good sort of colour bands to sort of say how to actually organise your hour and break it down with different activities. And then when you're having your break, here are some good activities to do. Maybe you should try skipping. Yeah, seriously, try skipping. Maybe you should wazzle an animal. Wazzling, that means stroking. There we go.
Never heard that
I know. So there's a 10-minute activities. Here's some 20-minute activities. Cartoonise yourself and different techniques to cartoonise yourself, yes? Listen to a TED Talk, do some yoga. So yeah, now, I could go into more detail about all these tips. No time to do that here. If you want to find out more, just have a look at the books. Yeah. Like I said, 371 in the library. Thank you.
Next, I will talk about something I'm sure everyone already knows about. But the Heartstopper TV show has been added to Netflix, and it's very big news in the library at the moment.
Oh, yes.
We've heard about it a lot. I mean, we'd already heard about Heartstopper, the graphic novel, a lot.
Yeah.
So now this is just an extra level. But we've both watched it, and we're both big fans of the graphic novel.
Absolutely.
We highly, highly recommend it if you want something that is a very accessible insight into kind of being young and queer and all that kind of stuff. It's just a really nice, sweet story that will just make you feel happy and
it's very uplifting.
Inside, yeah.
We were talking about it earlier, and I remember saying it's nice to have a YA, because obviously One of Us is Lying was on recently on Netflix too. And it's nice to have something that's a bit more uplifting and cheery as a YA thing, rather than like these edgy, gritty things or teenage angst.
Exactly.
I mean, there are elements of teenage angst in Heartstopper, of course.
It's going to be part and parcel, a little bit, but it's also so well balanced with the nice moments that can happen. And I think having a romance that is boy meets boy and doing that in a way that is just as lighthearted and, well, not always lighthearted, but just as accessible and easy to watch and sweet as, non-gay romances can be is really great.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's very trailblazing.
It's much needed diversity, isn't it? And just like saying, hey, certain groups of people have the same everyday struggles as those who are normally represented in fiction, and that's what makes it so good. I think it's a lifeline for many people, in the LGBT community to sort of see themselves represented like that on TV is fantastic. It's empowering, I would say.
Definitely.
Now, for those of you who've read the graphic novel, which is a lot of you watching this, I'm sure, there are some differences, aren't there?
There are a few.
We won't actually detail what those are. We don't give away spoilers, but let's say one of the main supporting characters is very different in this than, for instance.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is faithful, and
it's probably like it. I was surprised at how faithful it was. There are some differences, but I was pleased that they seemed to stick very closely to it. Apparently the writer was on set at the time of filming, so she really had a big hand in that.
You can't get any more faithful than that then.
No.
She's not going to let them make too many changes, is she?
Yeah.
And we were saying as well, one of the nice touches that they kept from the graphic novels, the blowing leaves.
Yes, the sort of
is
illustrations.
a recurring motif, and the little bolts of electricity when the hands almost touch.
Yes.
Anyway, we won't say any more. Just if you're a fan of the comics, watch it. If you haven't read the comics, watch it and read the comics.
Yeah, we'll just watch it.
Watch it. Just make sure you're familiar with it in some capacity, essentially. Okay, and the last piece of literary news is it's Carnegie Medal season now. Forgive Miss Rio and I, because we're probably going to be looking over your shoulder, so to speak, because we've actually got the poster of the Carnegie Medal. The Carnegie Medal shortlist is out, and now most of you know what that is. Essentially, it's the most prestigious book prize available for YA books out there. It's like the Booker Prize for young people.
Yeah.
And we have the poster up on the door so you can come and see these for yourself. So we're currently, reading group, was discussing it earlier.
Yes.
We're currently working our way through the shortlist. So yeah, we got a very strong shortlist.
It's very good.
Very diverse one. Anything stood out for you so far from the shortlist?
I read Punching the Air,
Mm-hmm.
which I really, really liked. It was written by 2 different people, one of whom was involved in a sort of, we'll say, race scandal in the 90s, and he was falsely imprisoned for most of his life. And he got out and started writing a lot, but he had a part in writing this book, and that's essentially what the story is about. It's based loosely off his experiences, so yeah, I loved that one. Definitely recommend that.
Okay, so that's one that stood out for you so
Yeah,
far. I mean,
really
for
good.
me, hard to pick one, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be Everyone Dies Famous in a Small Town.
I haven't read that one yet.
Barney C. Hitchcock, very daring because it's a collection of short stories.
Yeah.
She was shortlisted before with Smell of Other People's Houses. That was a cohesive novel with multiple narrative voices. This is just a series of short stories, but they're really good. They're really effective, very atmospheric. Of what's it like to live in small town America, essentially, and it does it very well. So those are 2 examples, but there's so many different ones. We've got When the Sky Falls by Phil Earle,
Yes.
which is a boy's friendship with a gorilla during World War II. We've got
What more do you need to know?
I know. Tsunami Girl,
Yes.
which is interspersed in manga, and it's about the Japanese tsunami and finding healing and closure in the wake of that.
Yeah.
What else have we got? We got October, which is about a girl who lives in the woods with her dad, and then her dad gets involved in an accident. She has to be raised by her mum, but she's alienated from her mum, which sounds quite sad, but in the end things work out well. Spoilers.
There's The Crossing from Angie
Yes.
Land, which is about the immigrant experience again. I think there's a boy who, I can't remember where exactly he comes, but from a very small, poor village in Africa, and he immigrates over to England and meets an English girl.
That's
and
right.
they kind of learn from each other about
Yep.
different ways of life. And did she win last year, or
She won the Costa
She
for
won
the
the Costa.
best children's. So for
I
her
haven't
first
read
one.
that one yet, but I'm looking forward to reading it because she's very good.
And that's in verse as well, isn't it?
That's in verse, yeah,
Yes.
that is in verse.
And then what else? So then we've got Guard Your Heart, which is about the ongoing Protestant Catholic tensions in Northern Ireland. I'm about halfway through that one. And then last but not least, we've got Cane Warriors, which is about Taki's, I've not even heard of this, Taki's uprising during slavery in the Caribbean. And it's written in Jamaican patois. Is that how you say it? Patois?
Yeah,
the sort of like the authentic dialect, which makes it a bit of a challenge, but it's a very powerful read.
Yeah, I really liked that side of it. It takes a little while to get used to, but you could just really hear it in your head. It made it so much more authentic. I don't know, I really felt like I was listening to those people talk.
It makes it feel authentic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was really great.
Gives it a narrative immediacy.
Yeah.
So as you can see, in a very brief rundown then of all the titles, it's very, very diverse. So it's a very strong shortlist, and we haven't read them all yet between us.
No.
The ones we have read, we have enjoyed. So maybe for the first time in a long time, we might actually enjoy all the shortlists this
I think
year.
we might. I think
Fingers
we
crossed.
might.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so up next then, it's time for our special guest. Now, so far we have had 3 teachers and our head girl as our first student guest. Now it's time to have our first member of staff who is not a teacher, our first non-teacher guest, and that is Miss Hill, our lovely director in residence from the drama department, and she is now going to share with us some of her thoughts on some of her favourite reads.
So I read a lot of non-fiction actually, and so the latest book that I've read was non-fiction. It's called All Dogs Great and Small, and it's by Graham Hall. So Graham Hall is a dog trainer, and the book is about how to train dogs. You can probably tell that I'm hoping very soon to get one. But what I really loved was not only just all this really useful practical information, and there are some things that you read and you go, oh, that's so obvious, but you didn't think about it at the time. I love that aspect of it. But I also love the warmth, the humour that Graham writes with, and all of the different individual stories that he uses to illustrate his points from all of the dogs that he's worked with over the course of about 20 years. So yeah, just a really great mix of dogs and their fun, warmth, humour and great information. I used to read loads as a child actually, and that was pretty much all fiction. I struggled for ages to try and think of just one book that I could recall from childhood as my favourite, but couldn't. I will settle for a book series, and it very nicely sits me as a proper 90s child, but Goosebumps by R.L. Stine. I love the horror genre. I loved every time a new story came out, and I'd be at the bookshop as quickly as I could to grab it and read it. Yeah, I think probably my love of horror nowadays very much stems from those early book encounters. And the great thing I think about horror is it really is like going on a bit of a roller coaster without even leaving your chair. So the book that I would absolutely love to adapt into a theatre show would be The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton, which I think, you know, wouldn't necessarily have to be just a play for children. I think there'd be so much that adults could delight in too. But The Magic Faraway Tree, it centres on these brothers and sisters who find themselves encountering the magic faraway tree, although when they first do, they don't actually realise it's magic. As well as encountering the tree, they meet all of the strange characters who live there, like Moonface and Saucepan Man. And then the great thing, the magic thing about the tree itself, is that at the top of it, a brand new land comes around every so often, and so the kids go on these amazing adventures to things like the land of sweets and the land of presents. They also encounter some not great so lands, which is where kind of like the danger in the story kind of comes into play. But I just think, what more of an adventure could that story be? So I'm definitely noticing a real trend here with my choices being based around children's books. However, the book undoubtedly that I would choose is Matilda. The writing of Roald Dahl speaks for itself. Brilliant, vivid characters. It's always enjoyable when those villainous ones meet their sticky ends. The great thing about Matilda in particular, you know, she's this girl who, in her world, everybody looks at her like she's really insignificant and will never amount to anything. And if anything, she's just a nuisance. By the end of it, she's completely discovered her magical powers. She's changed her world for the better. And I just really like that. I think for all of us, it kind of speaks a little bit to the superpowers that we have within ourselves, and you know, how we should try to find them as much as we can. My 3 desert island books. This might be cheating slightly, but I think it's not. I'm going to go for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's been on my to-read list for a very long time. I've seen the films. Once upon a time, I saw the Lord of the Rings, the musical, and I think if I've got a lot of time coming up on a fabulous desert island, well, then I can definitely find the time to finally read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Books 1, 2, and 3. That's my 3 picks.
Thank you for that, Miss Hill. Okay, so to finish off this episode, it's time to announce the competition. So we talked about Netflix just now, the Netflix adaptation of Heartstopper. Yep. So what we would like you to do is to do your own little mini Heartstopper comic strip, essentially. Challenge is to have it on one side of A4 paper. There are no rules in terms, it doesn't have to be a complete self-contained story. It can be a continuation of what's going on. It could be a spin-off, whatever you like, okay? And just put the entry in our off-the-shelf competition entry box on the counter, and the deadline for that is this half term. So looking forward to seeing some entries, and we will announce the winner in the next video. So good luck with your exams. Have a nice half term when that happens after it, and we will see you on the next episode. Until then, take care. Bye. Bye.